The best coaches in the game, we really ain't playing. We regroup up in the Slack chat where the coaches debrief. We be piecing these puzzles, occupy the chunk of the pie. Ain't no lie when we hit the block, helmets, casket, and top.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the DFS Army Bold Call Fantasy Football Podcast presented by Underdog Fantasy, our newest sponsor. We'll get to them in a second. Today's topic, Best Ball Leagues. We're continuing with the Best Ball Leagues theme, and we're looking at late round picks that will help you win your draft. Sleepers, favorites, whatever you want to call it. With me, as always, the hostess with the mostest, Encyclopedia Fantasy Footballica himself, Alan Seslowsky, a.k.a. Season Long Says. What's up, Says?
My whole life, I think I've been prone to addictions, and this is no different, man. I am addicted to playing best ball. Like, I think I'm going to tip 125 total best ball contests when I'm done. I love playing, and with our new sponsor, I mean, it hasn't gotten any easier since we're going to talk about all their different games.
I know. I love. All right, so you guys know me. You know I'm into daily fantasy football. That's why I'm here. That's what my passion is. I came from a background of someone obsessed with fantasy football, and that hasn't changed. But I love the best ball format because when I'm playing daily, there's two things going on. Number one, that takes up a lot of my time. I don't have a lot of time to set lineups. So as much as I love my season-long style of fantasy football, managing a bunch of teams, regular season-long teams, is difficult for me because I'm also very, very hyper-focused on all the daily fantasy football content that we do and all of that, and playing for big money in daily. So the leagues, if I get too many of them, they start to fall between the wayside. With best ball, I don't need to worry about it. I can basically put my drafting to the test and not have to manage a team.
Yeah, best ball serves two purposes in general I think, is that one is from a season-long perspective, it's you get all the best parts, you draft your team, and then you don't have to worry about it. And then at the end, you just go collect your money like you did on 17 best balls last year. I can't believe you won 17
out of 21. An 85% win ratio.
Yeah, that was good. So, and we'll get to that. But I think the other purpose, and what's really good, why I think people should play best ball, is there is no better way to prepare for your home league draft or whatever draft you're in. I mean, you could do all the research you want. You could read every magazine, every article. You get put to the test about what real ADP is and what players you like when you draft, and draft when people have stake in the game. And that's why I love best ball. I do all my research, most of my research, from playing in best ball contests. And
100%. You need to get a feel for how drafts go before you do your real drafts. And it's always a disservice to just jump into a draft thinking you know everything, even anybody else. When you've done a bunch of drafts, you start to get a sense of, if I take a tight end here, this winds up happening. Maybe I should wait. Or if I take a QB early, my team looks like this. So those are all really, really important things. And jumping real quick over to our sponsor, one of the cool things about their format, they're not just doing regular best ball leagues against, 10, 12 people, which I do a lot of, and those are great, and they have those. But they're also doing some pretty big tournaments, and between you and me, I don't think they're going to fill. I think there's going to be a lot of quote-unquote overlay in these, but they're also really reasonable price points. So they play like a tournament. Like there's one called The Bubble, which is a $5 entry, $100K in prizes. Contests where once you get through your league, you kind of compete against all the other league winners for these massive prizes, which is really cool, and it mimics the GPP, except in this GPP, you don't have to go up against the top DFS players in the world and their algorithms and their 150 lineups. Here, it's a really level playing field. It's really easy. And they also have the Best Ball Mania, which is their $1 million in prizes contest. Again, I don't think this thing fills. There's going to be a ton of overlay. It's a super opportunity to get into a tournament, $25 in entry. So really, really cool stuff from these guys. They had built the DraftApp. So it's basically very, very, very similar to what we all loved over the last couple of years, the DraftApp, but with some upgrades and, the same team behind it. So really, really good stuff.
Yeah, Underdog Fantasy. If you go to your app store, just type in Underdog Fantasy, and it's the little superhero dog with the yellow cape. Just download that app, and literally, how I found I gave the app to my mother, and I said, figure this out. I wanted to see if she could figure it out, and she figured it out. And I think that's always a good sort of litmus test to see if it's easy to use. Have your mother see if she can figure it out.
Yeah, if Mama says can do it, anyone can do it. So let's get into the topic of today, which is how to win your best ball league. These things carry over to season-long leagues, but there's a definite difference for me. And we talked about it on the last episode where we really focused on the general strategy for best balls, a lot of like where to take your running backs, how many to take, how many quarterbacks you need, why you can wait on wide receiver and load up on them, whereas running back, that's a little sketchier of an approach. So watch the first How to Win Your Best Ball. If you haven't seen it yet, make sure you go check it out. It'll be, we'll put a link in the description of this podcast below. But today, what I want to focus on is how you actually win them, which is once you have that strategy in place, who are the players that are going to help you win this league? And my experience, and I don't know, says if yours has been the same. My experience is these leagues are won in rounds 10 through 20. Everybody's going to get pretty good players in the first, 10-ish or so rounds. But if you can have production from your later round players, guys who are producing for your team, and in best ball, again, because of the format, how anybody who's putting up points any given week is elevated as the point scorer for your team. We don't need consistent every week scores. What we need are players that put up big scores every once in a while. And if you get enough of them, they all combine together to give you a great score each week and to help you win your league. Not to mention that half of your league mates will be getting zeros because they don't know what the fuck they're doing.
It's also important to, depending on where you're playing best ball, to figure out what the roster requirements are and how many rounds there are. So like in Underdog Fantasy, what I like about it is there's 18 rounds, but there's no kicker and no defense. So that gives you some roster flexibility for the onesie positions, like the quarterback, tight end. You can, in some other best ball platforms, you might not be able to have 3 of those quarterbacks or 3 tight ends. In Underdog, what I like about playing there, it changes my strategy where I can get 3 of each of those, and that changes the ADP slightly in the rounds that you're talking about, Geek.
Definitely. You want to focus on depth. So within your own team itself, you want to focus on, all right, how many of each position group do I need? And if you acquire studs, and I can actually talk about, I actually have an interesting strategy. I'm going to get into it. Before we get into the late round sleepers, I want to run one thing by you that I've been thinking about. So one of the tenets of best ball for me for the past few years, and again, I've been extremely successful at this. I've played them for multiple years to the point where after the first year, I figured out, okay, this is how you have to do it. I was getting zeros at positions, and I realized, oh shit, I drafted this like a season long. So what I figured out is you need to have multiple stud running backs, because when you take handcuffs, or when you're forced to take a bunch of handcuffs, what happens is you're spending an 8th or 9th round pick on a guy that many, many weeks will just get you a 0. And you don't want that. You want scoring coming from all position groups. So I like to focus very, very heavily on running back early. But I had a thought that Michael Thomas is so freaking good and he's so consistent as a wide receiver that having a Michael Thomas on your team, when I don't have stud wide receivers, I basically need to get 7, 8, or 9 of them on the team to make sure that I have at least 3 or 4 that are putting up a decent number. So I can, and we'll talk about these late round guys that I think are part of those 6, 7, 8, 9 wide receivers that I do believe will get you stud level wide receiver production. But I had a crazy thought about Michael Thomas, and that he's so good that he reduces the need for all of the depth at wide receiver to the point where you can take him 4th or 5th or 6th and still field a really, really good team, because it allows me to not need 8 or 9 wide. I pretty much know I have one of my 3 wide receiver spots locked down with a pretty good score every single week. Michael Thomas rarely duds. Last season, I don't think he had a dud. Maybe 1 or 2.
Yeah. I agree with that in a vacuum. Like what you just said is true. Like, you take in most best ball contests, you're taking a volume of wide receivers, because wide receivers as a whole are very volatile week to week, predictable year to year. And if you have a volume of 8 or 9, you're just hoping two of them pop each week at a high level and one of them can form like a baseline. Whereas if you have Michael Thomas, you only have to, that one of those spots is locked in. But the thing is, if Michael Thomas was available in the second round, if he was available at the end of the first round, it's a no-brainer strategy. And I'm not saying you're incorrect here, but there's a real opportunity cost, isn't there, of taking Michael Thomas in the fifth pick overall? Like you're saying,
the opportunity is maybe a guy who I'm going to give you a direct comparison. His teammate Alvin Kamara, and that's a decision that you're making right around pick number 5. Or I could make an argument even all the way up to Zeke Elliott, pick number 3, where Mike Thomas is going to deliver 25, 30 plus fantasy points way more frequently than any of these other guys will.
Absolutely.
On a raw points basis.
But it's not just about that single event. Like, it's not about who will deliver more fantasy points, Michael Thomas or Ezekiel Elliott. In fact, I'd probably bet on Michael Thomas, right?
I would 100% bet on Michael Thomas.
Right. But it's what happens in the second and third round. Now, when you add up your first 3 round picks, what's the better side? Taking Zeke with what you have in the second and third round, or taking Michael Thomas with the second and third round because of what it forces you to do with your roster construction? And again, that's the question they have to ask.
I can make a strong argument for Michael Thomas. I really couldn't. I've been thinking more and more about it, and I do think it's the move after pick. Probably, I mean, like you said, as high as pick 3, but beyond that, I'm starting because you can get. I've done enough of these already, where you'll get 2 pretty good guys at the end of the mid second rounder. You're getting an Austin Eckler, Kenyon Drake.
No, you're not anymore. You're not. Those
I just got Kenyon Drake at the end. Kenyon Drake.
Not an underdog. You didn't, because an underdog, those guys is a sharp room, and those guys are going, oh, you know why you're getting Drake and Eckler? I'm sorry. You probably, because in underdog, it's half PPR. Drake and Eckler in PPR will probably get pushed. Those guys are actual PPR push-up guys. Whereas in half PPR, usually it doesn't make that much of a difference. Those 2 guys, it makes a difference.
Yeah, so they're very big. So you can get those guys though later,
mm-hmm.
and you can get Todd Gurley in the 3rd round, and you can get Mark Ingram in the 4th round. There are good players. You could get the stinky cheese guys, as you love to say. You can get, how about DeAndre Swift? So there are names that you can get a little later, especially if you can you don't have to start grabbing wide receivers soon because you've got your stud production locked up. So, I'm the number one advocate of running back 4 in a row, but I'm just saying I'm open to wide receiver, running back. Well, let me ask you this though. In a half PPR format, which I think is close, people always say, "Oh, split the difference, half PPR." I don't think that half PPR is splitting the difference, even though it actually is. I think it's closer to standard. I hate that term, standard, to non PPR than it is to PPR. Meaning, like Derrick Henry becomes so much more valuable in this format, and is Michael Thomas, since he's not a big touchdown guy like Devontae Adams, in a half PPR format like it is on Underdog's app, does this theory then not as, let's say, viable because it's half? Yeah, PPR? I would dampen it for half point PPR because Michael Thomas absolutely is a PPR monster. That's right. Really whereas
Devontae Adams is more of a touchdown guy. So maybe he, I'm not saying you move him up that far, but he's a viable 1st round pick. Whereas in a lot of these best balls,
and Devontae Adams always was a viable 1st round. Towards that end of that 1st round, again, you're just measuring it against who's around. Like you're there, mm-hmm. and it's maybe you don't want Chubb. Maybe you don't like that he splits touches with Kareem Hunt. Maybe some of these names that fall in that range. Maybe you're not as high on Miles Sanders as the crowd might be.
PPR, right? That you feel like Miles Sanders is gonna be more valuable in PPR format. So when you're talking,
we really don't know. I don't know how they're going to use him. I have some interesting notes on him in my rankings, right. But let's get into. All right, so let's get into the topic of this episode because, again, late round. I'm telling you this from experience, multiple years of doing this. You win by getting the right players in rounds 10 through 20. And for that reason, we're going to talk about players that we love that you can get after the 10th round in your best ball drafts. We're using the Underdog Fantasy ADP data, but it's very, very similar to any other best ball site. So you're going to get a general...
Well, I'll tell you right now that the ADP here is pretty sharp. Like, on some of the other apps that we've played on, we've tried out, it's a little softer. It seems like some really, if you want to challenge yourself and see what kind of a fantasy football player you are and still be able to win money, because like you said, of the overlay issue, that this is good ADP right here. I like it.
Well, it's legitimate data from legitimate players. So I'm gonna start us off here because I have a few loves. There are some players that wind up on every single one of my teams, and when I'm giving out this information, I want you guys to be on the same group because when I'm fucking kicking ass, I want you to kick ass with me. That is the whole point of DFS Army. That's the point of the Bold Calls podcast. It's like, hey, let's do this together, right? Do what I'm sharing what I'm doing so that you can kind of do the same and you'll understand a little bit where we're coming from when we say these things. So the first player I'm going to mention, and I've mentioned him on some of the other shows before, ADP 176 overall. Okay, that is what, round 15 in your fantasy draft. And I love this player. He's a wide receiver, Randall Cobb, wide receiver, Houston, Texas. And let me give you my reasoning. I try to get Randall Cobb on every single best ball team. I have him on every single best ball team I have. And here's why, says. He's playing the slot wide receiver position for the Texans, a team with 2 wide receivers ahead of him who are both incredibly injury prone. Will Fuller, we're afraid to take him. Why? He's always hurt. Brandon Cooks, what's the problem with him? He always gets hurt. So who's hanging out there in the middle? Randall Cobb. Okay, we know that Randall Cobb, even last year as like the extra piece, I believe he on the Cowboys, he would have these occasional spike games. And I fully expect even with a fully healthy squad in Houston that you get healthy spike games. You'll have these spike games anyway. But if one of the 2 primary wide receiver goes down for Houston, in the 15th round, you're getting a wide receiver playing the slot for a team that scores a shitload, that has an elite quarterback and doesn't have other options to throw to, and is not going to rely heavily on the running game. I'm obsessed with Randall Cobb for my best ball team. I don't love him on my season long. He's not a guy I want to leave as a starter every single week. I think he will have dud games, really, really kind of crapola games. I think he's more like a really kind of like a 4K-ish level player on DraftKings to get an idea of where his salary will fall. But he's a guy that's going to give you spike games. I love him. You get him in there. He's going to give you 5 or 6 weeks of probably elite wide receiver production in round 15. How do you beat that, says? You try.
Yeah, I mean, here, okay, that's definitely good.
Over to you. Do better.
The issue with and I by the way, I agree with you. So, but I'm just saying the issue with Randall Cobb is that he's coming to a new team. We know traditionally coming to a new team could be a problem, but I think you correctly identified Randall Cobb as he's like a real professional football player. If anyone's going to get the system and know how to study up, it's going to be a player like Randall Cobb. Even when he walked right into Dallas, he had like 800 yards. So that doesn't really apply to him. And yeah, I mean, in a PPR league, even in a half PPR league, he's going to be one of those guys that he scores for you. And in the 15th round, that's a really good pick right there. Someone that I have that I was going to say that I've been found myself, again, you get tested when you go into these underdog fantasy drafts. You really find out who you like by who you're going to click on. And I'm staying in the same range as you are, like that 15th roundish ADP in the 170s. And I got a question for you, Geek. Do you know who had the most receiving yards on the Pittsburgh Steelers last year?
Listen, if it was Washington,
there you go. It was James Washington.
James Washington wouldn't blow my mind.
Right. Okay. Yeah. James Washington is going in the 15th round. Deontay Johnson's going in the 8th round. Now, I'm not saying Deontay Johnson doesn't have a good chance to take a step forward, but is the chasm of these 2 ADPs James Washington, who led the team in receiving yards in the same amount of games? Why is he an afterthought with Ben Roethlisberger coming back? It was James Washington had an 80-yard catch in the beginning of the year. Do you know who threw him that ball? It wasn't Mason Rudolph. Let me just clue you in there. It was Ben Roethlisberger. I'm not saying you got a breakout star. He's going to lead the team in receptions. Probably it's going to be Juju in yards. But I'm just saying in a best ball format where you don't have to call the shot, where James Washington is likely going to score for you. He's probably similar to Will Fuller in a sense where there's no risk involved because of the price, and he's probably going to have pop weeks. I wouldn't be surprised if we have 2 catches for 110 yards and a touchdown on at least 3 weeks. James Washington is an auto click for me, and nobody wants him.
I'm definitely down with the James Washington pick. I think it's fine that late. He's not a guy who I wind up with on many teams for whatever reason. I don't have him on my best ball teams right now, but I don't mind the pick at all. I think it's probably because there's a couple of other names in that area that I might like a little bit.
But that's the thing about best ball. You're not playing one best ball and going home.
No.
What you're doing is you're playing 10, you're playing 15. Like I said, I'm up to like in the 50s already. It might even be close to 60. And you want to spread out. You want to get a little this guy, a little that guy, just in case. And what happens is, in the last, 10 or dozen of them that I've done, he's been an ad in probably like 13 of the last 15 best balls.
I love it. All right. I'm going to give you another name of mine. And I'm sticking with the wide receiver theme because wide receiver is who we want in this zone. This is why we're taking. All right,
This is why you're not taking Michael Thomas in the first round.
That's why I generally don't. This is why I generally don't. And this is why we're hammering running backs early, because when you get to the 12th, the 13th, the 15th, there's so much great value in actual wide receivers that will be on the field. Let me give you an example. I'm in round 15. We just talked about Randall Cobb, a guy who's going to be on the field for 3 rounds, for 3 downs. He's out there. He's the slot guy. He's always on the field. If I'm looking at the running backs in this area, it's like Jerick McKinnon, 49ers. I don't know what team he's even on right now. You know what I'm saying? Like, he probably will get you a 0. Or Joshua Kelly from the Chargers. Those are the types of running backs that are available in this part of the draft. There's A.J. Dillon,
By the way, I do not stand with you on Jerick McKinnon. I like your philosophy here, but Jerick McKinnon is going to be the 3rd down back. He took a pay cut to stay with the team. He's funny enough. He's a guy I've been adding lately.
We'll see if that happens, right?
Yeah.
Or if it's having. But okay, fine. But still, you're talking about a 3rd down back.
Your point is taken. Your point is well received.
You're dealing with like really scrubby running backs that probably won't be on the field very much versus wide receivers. And I'm going to tell you a guy I absolutely love next, but versus wide receivers that are on the field every play. They might not be as consistent, but they're out there all the time, and they do have big games. And I'm going to say
before you say the guy again, the reason that I gravitate towards someone like James Washington is because the format specific, and in a half PPR, long plays are king. So that's
100%.
Yeah,
and he's playing. He's playing the role of
Deshaun Jackson.
Well, the burner. I have another name that I like to always use, but basically the burner for the Pittsburgh offense is so formulaic. It's the same all the time. They have the Darius Hayward Bay role of the guy who just runs out and burns, and he.
But Darius Hayward, but come on, that guy never did anything. That's
I call the Darius.
Go ahead, give me your next one. That's what the people want.
DH Bizzles. All right, my next guy, Preston Williams, 11th round pick via ADP. Okay, number 2 wide receiver for Miami. Before he gets hurt last year, he's actually outperforming Devontae Parker, who I love. I like getting Devontae Parker and Preston Williams on the same team because now I'm locking, and this is a little strategy I use where I lock up the production from a team in full. So when I have Parker on my team, I almost always try to get Preston Williams because it's going one or the other way. Like, you're throwing a Parker, you're throwing a Williams, or you ain't throwing anybody. So I like to lock up the entire wide receiver core, especially when it's cheap, from a single team. Preston Williams, the dude looks incredible. You said he dropped in the draft?
Preston Williams was likely going to be a 1st or 2nd round pick. He had some off the field issues and went undrafted.
Extreme talent with this kid. Coming off the injury, he seems healthy now. He's making catches. I've literally watched just in the last couple days film of Preston Williams making Odell Beckham style one-handed super catches in the bubble, in the Miami practice bubble. It might be Tua, it might be Fitzpatrick. I don't care. Give me Preston Williams late as an explosive wide receiver who I think could actually elevate himself to the point where he is this year's DJ Shark. He is this year's breakout guy. So what do you say about Preston Williams and in the 11th round?
I like what you said about Preston Williams being unheralded because he had some off the field issues, and he came out of the gate firing. I mean, he was leading the team in targets. He was leading the team in yards, I believe. I mean, he just looked like an amazing star one of these guys that had just got forgotten about. And then what happens? He tears his ACL. And the problem I have with Preston Williams in 2020 drafts is that it happened late in the season. It happened in week 9. Now, it looks like things are going well for him, so I'll cede you that. But he's not a lock to be ready for week 1. And it's, if you make him an 11th and a 12th round pick in your season long league and it's a problem, you just cut him and you move on. And it's and I agree with that. He should be on your redraft teams. The problem in best ball, as we know, is there's no waiver wire. And let's just say, we're going to suffer so many injuries, as you correctly identified in the beginning of this podcast. It's a game of attrition. Why walk in? Why get on the boat with an injury? And it could pay off. It could, again, in best ball, it's similar to DFS. If you don't get one of the top 2 places, you get 0. So I like it as a home run play, but I think that I proceed cautiously optimistic about a late season ACL. Is that a fair counterpoint?
Your brand is absolutely all about staying away from last year's injuries.
Only because we get so many of them during the season. I just don't want to start with an injury.
Yeah, no, and that's been your brand, and that stays on brand for you. And I'm not surprised that that's your reaction. I'm still doing it because
it's not wrong to do.
I also just I feel like if he gets hurt and I have Devontae Parker on the team, that it's fine because now Parker's getting all the looks and I don't need the backup player. So I'm okay with it in that sense also. And I also have this concern that I just want to make sure I lock up the entire backfield of a team. I'll be honest with you. I do that very, very much with Crowder and Bashard Perriman as well, because it feels to me like I'm locking up the production on a team no one wants exposure to. No one likes the Jets, but you know what? They're going to throw for touchdowns. And one of these 2 guys is going to have a good game almost every week. Don't know which one, but it doesn't matter to me if I have both on my team. So again, I'm drafting multiple wide receivers. I'm drafting them late after most of the the names that everybody is into are gone. So I have this approach of trying to lock up an entire backfield. Another one that I've done is Marquise Brown and Boykin.
Yeah.
Hey, let me get them all. Let me get, let me just lock it down. None of them are elite, but let me get them all. So I've said mine. Give me your next one on the list.
By the way, Hollywood Brown, his stock keeps moving up. He's going consistently in the 5th and 6th round now.
It might have moved up a little too much for me at this point.
Yeah, I mean, in the beginning of best ball season in March, where I was, I was touting him as the best 8th round pick in the history of fantasy football. But that is no longer. I still actually like him, and I think that he could deliver on that ADP. I just, when you get something at a discount, you don't like paying full retail for it, later on. So
tell me about it, man. Tell me about it.
People get addicted to discounts, all right, so Geek correctly.
I have more, man. I got more.
Yeah. Geek correctly identified that you want to attack running back early on in your draft, so you're not picking at the scraps and potential zeros as you get down into the later rounds. But I told you this offline. I know there's a lot of anti-Leonard Fournette sentiment going around right now, but I think it's founded. And I'm saying that he is not a lock to be the starter, a couple weeks into the season. I just think that the team doesn't like him. So what does that mean? All right, if you buy into that and you're off of Fournette, you have to say, okay, the Jaguars may want to see that if in their 2021 draft, if they need to attack the running back position, or are they happy with what they have? And what they have behind them is last year's 5th round pick, Raquel Armstead, and a free agent they picked up from the Saints. So I think drafted Divine Ozigbo in the 7th round out of Nebraska. And both of these running backs to me are live plays. Now, Raquel Armstead is a little bit more expensive. He's like a 11th or 13th roundish. Ozigbo is undrafted, so you can add him at the end. And there was reports today as we're recording this podcast in the week of August 17th that Ozigbo was running with the starters. Now, again, you talked about running backs that could get you zeros. This is one of them. He could get a 0, but is your last round pick, and you're talking about possibilities, and you totally neglected running back. You only have 3 that you feel good about. I'm adding Armstead in the 13th. I'm adding Ozigbo if I miss on him in the last round, and thinking, I think there's like a 35 to 40% chance that's your Jacksonville starter for at least more than half of the season.
Listen, that's totally fine as an approach if you didn't load up on running back early, or if you happen to be the person that took Leonard Fournette. You definitely want to back that up.
Yes, that's a good. You know what? I hate cuffs, but that's a good one.
Yeah,
because
you need to cuff him.
Because you got him in the third round, and if it works out, great. You got your guy in the third round. And for just in case, this seems like the problem is we don't know which one, or if it's going to be both of those guys. But I think you can put your chips on whatever one you like better, and at least have a reasonable. It's not like a guaranteed handcuff. Like, hey, if I have draft David Johnson and then I get Duke Johnson, I think I'm good. This is like, but it's much cheaper too. 17th round, 18th round in Underdog Fantasy, their last round is a great, and again, that's. We're you and I, Geek, we're drafting wide receivers there. But just in case you were tempted to take Chris Godwin in the second, and then you liked AJ Brown in the third, and
don't do it.
But if you do,
but don't.
This is your escape hatch, Divino Zigbo.
But these are your whole life. The reason I'm going to keep hammering wide receivers because that's who I take late, guys, and that's how I want you to draft your team. I want you to be at the point by round 11, 12 where you're like, shit, I need my third tight end. I probably need my third quarterback. And I need to load up on more of these useful wide receiver pieces. Again, every one of them is stinky cheese for your season-long league. I don't want any of these guys because if you're starting, Steven Sims Sr., what the hell is he?
Steven Sims Jr., the father, I don't think he plays football.
No, I want Steve Smith Sr.
Oh, yeah, no. He plays football.
Sr.'s son, Steve Smith Jr.,
I have an on-topic question. Everyone in the DFS army knows that you're a big Jets fan. You are basically, you've been there since the beginning. You root for them as a kid, and you stay with them as an adult. You're self-loathing. You're the typical Jets fan. You hate yourself. You hate the Jets. But
the Jets caused me to get into fantasy football.
Right. Okay. So where are you? We're talking about late-round picks. Chris Herndon. Where are you on him?
Herndon's great. Listen, I think Herndon's one of the best sleepers of the tight end position in the entire league. The dude keeps getting hurt, though. So it's very hard to trust him.
He didn't get hurt his first year. He actually showed out, right? And then he got suspended in 2019. And then when he came back, he got hurt, and then he was in the doghouse. But usually tight ends that show like a pulse their rookie year, that's good. Like a lot of good tight ends don't do anything their rookie year.
The most important thing with him, and this is one of the reasons why I like Jameson Crowder also, Adam Gase brought the old Miami Dolphins offense. And I put offense in quotes because it wasn't that good of an offense. But he brought this offensive style to the Jets. And the main role in that offense was the role that Jarvis Landry played, the crossing man, right? He just basically runs short crossing patterns.
Jarvis Landry? Oh, in Miami. Okay.
In Miami, when Jarvis Landry was there, he played this role, right, of short crossing patterns. It's kind of like a West Coast thing. You throw the short pass, you want him to run and catch the ball, and a lot of guys crossing the middle of the field. Last season, they had Jameson Crowder in that role because Herndon was hurt for most of the year, and even when he came back, then he got hurt right away. But I got my entry to the King of the Beach contest by playing the backup tight end for the Jets, Ryan Graham, I believe was the name, who put up 28 points that week, propelled me into the final by making that decision because I know the Jets like to throw to the tight end position. So
Sam Darnold made Ryan Griffin fantasy relevant last year.
Did.
And there is no more just a guy than Ryan Griffin.
100%. So yeah, Herndon has a shot, but you want him as your third tight end taken. And you want to have like decent guy, top 10.
And you can get him at tight end 28. You can get him as your third guy. Now you said something interesting. You said about like Gase's system. I heard the other day, Mike Salfino, who is a Wall Street Journal reporter in The Athletic and all this, but he said something interesting. He said that the tight end production is more based on not offensive system, but quarterback preference. He said there's certain quarterbacks, regardless of system, who favor the tight end. And then he went on to cite why Sam Darnold is one of those guys. So again, I don't remember the exact science or the data he pulled behind that, but just as observing the Jets as much as you do, I think that's right. I think Chris Herndon is someone that I don't have on many teams, and I am going to forego elite tight end in some of these and just get like maybe one in the middle and then two of those end game guys from now on.
Absolutely nothing wrong with that. I actually saw a great breakdown from your boy, the fantasy football engineer, I believe
Kevin
it
O'Brien,
who was talking about how mid-round tight ends bust at a massively high level and why it's borderline never the right move to take one of these guys. Like after you get past the first 2 or 3, that it's almost always the best move. Like
what's mid-round? Is it like tight end 7 through like 15?
No, it was like tight end 4 through tight end like 9 that they only wind up as a TE1 some 40% of the time. So the bust rate for wasting a pick early on a tight end is massive. And this is why you and I have come up with guys who, by the way, do show up in the post 10th round situation. So I want to mention a couple of them since it's topical to this show. You can get Mike Gesicki, who is the perfect breakout tight end candidate here.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to let you do the Gesicki rap because we identified him early on as a guy who would move up, but now there's so much. It's so obvious with Gesicki to me that there's pushback on Gesicki. So good, give the Gesicki rap, but it just seems like with all the injuries.
This is one of the beautiful things about what we go back to May on our fucking tight end show. We're like, dude, this guy's going TE16. He should be top 12. So like all the stuff we talk about happens, which is why it's really nice to draft these leagues months ago when we have like an edge on the field in terms of ADP. But Gesicki was breaking out at the end of last year. Miami, not a team with tons of pass catching options. As you said before, Preston Williams and injury risk, right? Mike Gesicki coming on strong towards the end of last year, tons of targets, breakout candidate here. You can get him super late. He is the perfect guy. I believe he's actually ranked number 120 overall, according to ADP. So exactly the first pick in the 10th round of your draft. I don't mind taking him as the first tight end that I have on my team. I'll mention the other name that's in that range that you can get past. That's I still consider semi-elite, and you do too. You put me on him. Jonnu Smith, it goes a few picks later or about a round or so later. So you can get these types of guys in the 10th round. Don't need to spend a 4th rounder on Zach Ertz. Don't need to.
The one thing that's a little concerning about Gesicki, but not enough to like stop me from where he's going, is the yards per target. And it's just, it's a lot of short stuff. It's like in the mid 6s is yards per target. What I'm just saying is, you have some of these tight ends. You can talk about the elite tight ends. The elite tight ends catch the ball down the field, down the seam. I'm just saying it's not a total buzzkill, but it's something to pay attention to, that it's a lot of short stuff.
What I'm looking for in best ball are players that are involved in their team's offense. End quote. As long as you're involved, as long as you're getting 4 or 5 targets a game, as long as you have the occasional 12-pointer to deliver for me, the occasional 18-point game, that's all I'm asking, because I've got 3 of you. So I just need 3 guys that are involved, and my hope is that every week, at least one of the 3 will produce enough to get me 10+ points at the tight end position, which is all I want in my best ball team. I need the position. I can't get zeros, but I don't need to spend a fourth round pick on a guy hoping that he's going to get me 22 points a game when there are actual running backs and wide receivers and other players that will get me 20 points most games still available. But here I am taking a hope and prayer thing. No, I'll have a few of them. So like I said, you can get Herndon and he can have 5 weeks this year where he gets between 18 to 23 fantasy points.
Yeah. I mean, I like the middle tier a little bit in fantasy this year, but I really think I'm drawing a hard magic marker line after Darren Waller's name, who even him I'm a little goosey on, but like after him is tight end 6, then it becomes the middle for me. I think the elite tier, and I know there's a super elite tier when you talk about Travis Kelce, but tier 1, when you're really talking about tight ends that you really feel good about, I think there's 6 of them. It's Kelce, Kittle, Ertz, Mark Andrews. We have Mark Andrews at number 2, by the way. It's Waller, and who the heck am I missing? I'm missing one.
Maybe
more.
Evan Ingram. I mean, are you putting Evan Ingram on that in that category? Tyler Higbee.
Higbee, that's the guy. Sorry about that. Yeah, Higbee. And Ingram, obviously, just because of the injury history, and we have to push him down. But if you talk about like if I was guaranteed 16 games, don't you hate when people say that? When you're guaranteed 16 games, I mean, Evan Ingram is one of the best athletic tight ends. He doesn't block. He's one of those tight ends, and that's the same with Gesicki. They don't block. Don't you love that when they have no blocking skills. Like they're like, okay, this is just going to be an oversized wide receiver. I love that.
By the way, another one that I was just reading about, since we're on the post 10th round tight end discussion here, and you mentioned a few great ones. Another one is Blake Jarwin. This guy is going to be a player, man. Jason Witten's out of there. Blake Jarwin is not a blocker. He's learning to block. Actually, the Cowboys just came out. They said we're gonna play a ton of 11 personnel sets, which includes a tight end in the game, and he's learning to block. They think it's going to be better for Zeke. They're going to spread the field around a little bit more and get a block, but he's going to be out on the field much more than ever before. So he's another name. But I want to get back.
Well, one second. Stay with that for a second, because there's an important question I want to ask you. So, I mean, the obvious counter to that, I'm not breaking any ground by saying, is that he's assumably the fifth target on the team. Okay. So you have, your two, Gallup and Amari Cooper. Obviously, CeeDee Lamb looks like he's going to walk into being a professional, pass catcher right away. And then, of course, Zeke catches passes. But this is how I've answered that question before. When people say, well, he's the fifth target, there's going to be so much coverage on those guys. It's going to be a lot of times where they get down to like the 12-yard line and you're like, oh, wow, that's another Blake Jarwin touchdown and no one's guarding him. It's going to be, I think he's a lot. I'm not saying he's going to be a yardage and a catch monster, but I think has a very good chance to be that Eric Ebron tight end that catches 10 touchdowns out of nowhere, and it's low yardage, low catch volume.
I have a theory about what you just said. And yes, I agree with you there, but I have a theory about it, that I think the three wide receivers eat into wide receiver target production. They don't eat into tight end target production.
Yeah, and they draw the coverage away, as we just said. Yeah, that makes sense.
They do. They're eating into each other to the point where I don't love any of those three wide receivers because there's just too many of them to feed, especially when CeeDee Lamb starts to really be integrated into the offense. So I don't love any of them. But I don't think that it's a different position group. I think when a play is called to the tight end, for example, it doesn't matter. Like, he's going to get his looks because he's playing a different position group. So it doesn't bother me that they have the three wide receivers. Bothers me much more for just, I'm not drafting Amari Cooper like in my season long league where he's going, because they just have too many other options. And I don't like that. There's too many mouths to feed on a team that likes to run the football and plays at a very slow pace. It doesn't work for me. And I never draft Amari Cooper, and I never draft Michael Gallup, and I never draft CeeDee Lamb because there's too many of those guys. I just don't like that. But I don't. It doesn't bother me at the tight end position. So let's move on, and I will throw it over to you. Give me another late round sleeper that's winding up on a lot to all of your best ball teams. The guys that you're kind of grabbing maybe a round or two even ahead of where he shows in his ADP, where you're like, I just need this guy on my team. I think he's going to help me win my league, and no one likes him. He's got the stinky cheese.
There's no one. It's hard to call guys in the 15th round, 16th, 17th, 18th round stinky cheese because we don't
expect because of that, right? Yeah,
right. So I'm going to give you a specific player name, but I'm going to first describe a specific player type, and I've said this on other podcasts, so humor me a minute. Sophomore wide receivers who have disappointed their rookie season. Okay, guys that were first or second round picks. Not so much a third round pick, but first or second round picks in the real NFL draft that just didn't deliver. I mean,
do you want me to guess now? Because I can throw out a bunch of names.
Yeah, I mean, we could, we know all those names, but the one that you're talking about, the one that's going the cheapest of them all is JJ Arcega-Whiteside. Now, I still like him for a couple reasons. One, I mean, you go back to his days in college, and of 21 end zone targets, he caught 20 of them for touchdowns. Now, I know it didn't go well his first year, but by all accounts, he was fighting off an injury. Sometimes guys just take a minute to get up to speed. But with Alshon Jeffrey already on the pup, the other wide receiver is a rookie who doesn't play the same position as JJ Arcega-Whiteside. I know they have the two tight ends. Certainly know that, but that's it. JJ Arcega-Whiteside in the first month of the season is going to be put into the deep water, and it's sink or swim. They're going to throw him the football when they get close, and that's what he does best. Now, he could bust. He could be a guy that's just not made for the NFL. But I went back and looked again at the college tape, and I know college isn't the NFL, but he's just too damn dominant in the red zone, and I mean in the end zone, not like the 18-yard line red zone. He's a player who you could yell to the room, I'm taking JJ Arcega-Whiteside, and still get him with your last pick. Nobody wants him. I'm very interested in him in my best ball teams.
Absolutely, your last pick of your league. He's available pick 20 if you're on DraftKings or FanDuel or DraftKings, and he's available pick 18 on Underdog. So he's there for you if you want him.
Yeah, and
I don't mind the play either. I think it's a little risky because I'll give you a different name that I like more, and I'll give you the reason why. So the risk with
staying with that theme, staying with the sophomores that failed theme, or something else.
No. I mean, I have listen. We could talk about Paris Campbell. We could talk about N'Keal Harry.
Those guys are more expensive, though.
More expensive. Like N'Keal Harry, I think is going to be great. Paris Campbell, maybe. But no, I'm going to give you a different name of a guy who I think no one really wants. No one kind of likes or pays attention to this fellow. But and I've mentioned him before on these shows. But again, in my theory of putting up a volume of wide receivers with the hope of avoiding zeros, I want my 10s and my 12s. I want my occasional 20s. I'm getting my elite production from my early picks. And from these guys, I just want them driving my wide receiver position forward so that I never get zeros. I never get like two. The worst thing in your best ball is when you're looking through your scores for the week and it's like you're looking at wide receiver, you get like a 17 from your best guy, then you get like a 9 and a 4. And you're like, a fucking 4 was the best third guy I had. What's going on here? And then, these leagues are like your fantasy league. Like, the winner is scoring 165 points and, every point counts. Russell Gage. Okay. My man, third wide receiver, Atlanta Falcons, available right there. Last pick in the draft. He's the number 3 wide receiver. He's got a couple things going for him. Number 1, they throw to him. He's not coming off of a year where he had no production. Even with Julio healthy and Calvin Ridley in there, Gage was getting 4 to 9 targets per game. They weren't like the most exciting targets. He's definitely the possession guy. He's definitely the most likely to be hanging around 5 yards up the field. But he's a guy that is pretty likely, to be involved in his team's offense every single week. Now, this isn't exciting. It's not. This is a last pick in the draft guy. Okay, because if I'm getting production for my last pick, I'm winning. That is how you win. He has the upside of any sort of an injury to Julio, who is old and injury prone, or to Calvin Ridley, who's young and healthy for all intents and purposes, but in the year of the Rona, you never know. But if either one of those guys goes down, he becomes a 15 to 20 fantasy point potential guy every week. But even without that, he hangs out. He's going to get you 5 or 6 targets. He'll have 3 or 4 weeks where he puts up 14 plus fantasy points over the course of the year. You're talking about the last pick in your draft. He's a guy that I always take. Russell Gage is on every one of my best ball teams. He's always there. He's always available, and most people don't know who he is. I love that.
Yeah, no, Russell Gage it's an interesting pick. I mean, if you like Russell Gage, I think just by default, you have to be off of Hayden Hurst, right? I mean, you can't, both of them can't do well. Obviously, an injury could propel anyone into a bigger role, but, Julio's a target hog. Calvin Ridley, everyone's projecting for more targets. We are too. We think he's ready to take the next step. But, Hayden Hurst is going to presumably fill that role that Austin Hooper left. But I don't. He shouldn't get all of that. I mean, we've never seen Hayden Hurst get a bunch of targets. So maybe
I'm not a Hayden Hurst believer, to be clear.
Yeah, so I think that makes sense. It's funny though. You said something that I hear a lot of people say, and it's a true narrative that Julio Jones is injury prone. Do you know how many games he's missed over the last 5 years?
He doesn't miss a lot of games. I've heard your argument.
Hold on. How many games has he missed over the last 5 years?
I'll say 7 or 8 games.
3.
He comes out though and he plays as a decoy. So it's not a fair argument because Julio Jones, how many times over the last 5 years did they play him? But he was just out there jogging up, acting as a decoy. And that happens a lot with Julio Jones when he's hurt, but the leg is like he's got the hammy issues. And we saw with Calvin Johnson, when the drop-off happens, or Des Bryant, when the drop-off happens with the elite wide receiver, the cliff is sudden.
Yeah, and Dez is sneaky young, though. Dez is like 30, 31, something like that. I mean,
I don't know what the fuck happened with Dez. I don't know what happened still. I don't know.
I mean,
I still don't understand it.
Yeah, the cliff risk is real at age 31 with Julio, but I don't know. He didn't look too bad to me last year. So anyway, but yeah, your pick of
hurt. He's always questionable. He's always every single week. These guys who are questionable every single week of the season, you have to expect that they have soft tissue issues that aren't going away. It's been a thing with Julio, but that's not. I'm not even counting on that. I just think Russell Gage was fine anyway.
There's definitely a Russell Gage hive out there. I know a lot of dynasty players like him. Yeah. There's a hive, meaning a small, group of people.
I don't know about the hive. I've just been liking Russell Gage. He's a guy I played in DFS last year. I use the DFS to help me identify these guys who were the 1 week, like $3,500 like cheap guy who you could play. And
hey, by the way, let's just give our guy in the chat here a little shout out. Vincent Magno. He said he loves listening to us talk football. Thanks, brother. It's guys like you that listen to us talk. It gives us a lot of pleasure to do it too. So
on that note, guys, for those of you who are watching this right now, there's a couple things we need you to do for us to let us know you're here. Always, please like and subscribe to the channel. Drop your questions, your comments, anything in the comment section. It really helps us with the YouTube, or the algorithms for whatever place you're listening to this through. If it's on the podcast, through podcast.
Hey, you know what? Here's a good way this is a good way to say it. I see a lot of content creators position it like this, and this is what gets me to click like or make a comment. If you got value out of this podcast, just do us a favor and click the like button. If you didn't like the podcast, or if it's not for you, don't bother. We understand. Don't just give us a sympathy like. If you got value out of this podcast today, just click like. If you want, make a comment. Move on. That's it.
There we go. Hey, I have to say it because
before we finish. Before we finish up, I just want to talk quickly because we're coming to the end of the podcast. Let's just talk about our sponsor again, because if you want to play Bestball, if you've never played Bestball, go download the Underdog Fantasy app in your app store, Android or Apple. It is so simple. You can get into drafts for just a couple bucks and you can win money. Usually how it works is you're in a league of 12 and you can draft with an 8-hour clock or a 30-second, or they have a 50-second clock.
It's 30-second and
30-second clock.
The 8-hour though is so key.
Well, it depends on what you want. Sometimes I just want that quick adrenaline draft hit, and I just do that. And go in there, and if you win the league, which is total points for the entire season, excluding week 17, you will win the money of the league. I mean, that's simple. Or you can go into another type of contest where it's either $5 or $25, and then there's an overall component. But the ones that I prefer, I like doing a lot of these individual leagues. I just feel like I have a better chance to win them. But of course,
you absolutely listen. If you absolutely do have a better chance to win those, because it's a 1 in 12 odds instead of a 1 in 46,000 odds. By the way, please, we don't judge ourselves based on if we can win the Ball Mania contest with $1 million in prizes, where you've got to beat out 43,200 other entrants in order to hit. Like, dude, good luck with that. I judge myself based on if I go up against 12 people, if I can finish top 3, that means I'm in the money. Right? That means I had a top 25% outcome. That is a special person. If you can produce top 25% outcomes in anything in life, you're doing really good, because the average is going to be 50%. So
and what's
the average massively.
You and I talked about this, like in any walk of life, anything you do, when you call the cable company, when you have to be on hold with the airlines, it drives you crazy. Customer service. One thing that our sponsor does, and then we'll move on, is that they have world-class customer service. So if you have a question or a problem with anything, you just tweet at them and they tweet you right back. So I think that is any company always deserves a standing ovation. So
I think the best part is I'm pretty sure they're funded by Mark Cuban himself.
I don't know that. So
yeah.
Mark Cuban. By the way, is DFS Army give good service like that? Do we when people have a problem, or we just tell them to go F themselves?
I tell them, fuck off. Go. You know what I tell people when they complain? Fuck off. You go somewhere else. Good luck.
All right, man. Let's wrap it up. We did a 55-minute.
All right, there we go. So best ball strategy. Do you have any other names? Throw out a couple more names that I'm picking late. Just lightning round. Let's without a lot of explanation. Guys who are winding up on all of your teams. Give me 3 names. Post 120. Post round 10.
Yeah, sure. It's no problem. If you get stuck, again, he's not a guy I'm actively targeting, but if you get stuck at tight end, don't worry. Just grab Jack Doyle. I think he can fall into the end zone 7 times, no problem. Jalen Hurd, the wide receiver on the San Francisco 49ers, is looking like he looked amazing in preseason last year, and then he got hurt for the season. Now with Deebo Samuel out, I like Jalen Hurd as a good chance for 8 or 9 touchdowns. I think that's a good one. And my final one, Irv Smith is a I know, but he looked good. I've always liked him. And again, if you get stuck at tight end, you're not going to feel good about it. But I'm so not into Irv Smith that I feel like I need to at least add him in a couple best balls. Now I know it's not like a sexy pick. The other two I like a lot better, but Irv Smith, he looked good enough. And if something happens to Kyle Rudolph, they throw to the tight end. They don't pass a lot to the wide receivers. They have a rookie wide receiver. They're going to need someone. He presumably will be the second. After Adam Thielen, he will be the second leader in targets on that team. And again, I know it's not sexy, but who's going to get the second most targets on Minnesota, Geek? Who do you think it's going to be? Is it going to be the rookie Justin Jefferson?
I hope that he will get there, but I think it actually might be Dalvin Cook. So, but we'll see.
Fair enough. That's fair. But I'm just saying, I'm talking about tight end life preservers at the end.
Irv Smith is fine late. He hasn't produced yet in his career.
But 1 year. 1 year.
Yeah. All right. Let me throw out a couple of names real quick without a ton of explanation. Curtis Samuel, Panthers, disappointing season last year, but they have changed quarterbacks. They have an actual quarterback now that is capable of delivering the football much better than what they had last season. So I'm giving Curtis Samuel another chance. You can get him in the 10th round. Sammy Watkins, the ultimate in best ball type player. Going to have a couple of weeks where he puts up 35. Lots of zeros.
Can you believe that the starting wide receiver on a Patrick Mahomes offense is available in the 12th round?
I mean, it's ridiculous. Get Sammy Watkins. I don't want him on my fantasy team because he will destroy you with his zeros. Right. I get it. He is the stinky cheese season-long fantasy guy price, all day.
He's in the dollar bin at the store. You ever walk into the bin and it's like, hey, these cassette tapes or these CDs are $1. Dude, you just buy it.
Sammy Watkins has been ruining season-long fantasy teams since back in his days in Buffalo. Like, he's got a 10-year career of doing this where he'll have 2 great weeks, but he was on your bench because he was fucking up the whole time. And you never get it. He is the ultimate best ball player. And I'm going to throw one more name out because we didn't mention it, and he should be mentioned. Alan Lazard, Green Bay Packers. You can get him in the 12th round. Listen to what Aaron Rodgers is saying, which is like, I love this guy. He's my number 2 guy. He's going to be the number 2. He's going to elevate himself. He's now gone into an offseason as the guy. Last year, he was like some practice squad shit stain.
He was a rookie.
Stain. He was a rookie. Unheard of. He was behind all these other guys. Kumaro gone. Marquez Valdez-Scantling, don't like. Geronimo Allison, gone. All of these other names that were kind of in the way.
It could be St. Brown is there, but I mean, like you said,
he's there, but he's like
he's just a name on a jersey, just a name on a jersey.
Yeah,
you know what it's with Alan Lazard. It's what I like about it is that he had there's Brady who's like that, Rodgers like that. Like, he has to trust you, and then he'll just force feed you the ball. And it seems like from all the offseason puzzle pieces and data points that he's in the circle of trust for the beginning of the season.
If I want to last point as before we go, and I'll do the goodbyes here. What I want you guys to get out of this, because I really want you to win your best ball leagues. I want you to have fun. And everything DFS is hard. These aren't as hard. These are very, very winnable if you use the strategy, because your opponent doesn't know. But what I want you to take away from this episode today, and the reason I focus so hard on giving you 7 or 8 or 9 wide receiver names here post round 10 that are all great and will all produce for your team, is that you don't have to rush the wide receiver position in these leagues. Fill up the other stuff. Get a 1 or 2 wide receivers by round 10, even if you only had 1. But ideally, you'd have at least 2 by this point. But you've got 10 picks. You filled up your team with goodness, all kinds of sexy, yummy goodness. 1 quarterback on your team. You're taking your other quarterbacks beyond round 10 as well. We don't have to get into those. You can get Sam Darnold almost the last pick, and I fucking love Sam Darnold for best ball. But wait on wide receiver. Fill them in here with these guys who will play, who will have targets every week, who will do production every week. Get 8 or 9 of them, so that.
By the way, Sam Darnold QB 10 over the last 8 games last year.
I know he's going. Look, his ADP is like the 17th round. It's ridiculous. Sam Darnold's on every one of. You know what I'm talking about? I should have mentioned him. He's on every one of my best.
We got to wrap though. We're gonna do 4 more of these shows. Let's.
No, we'll keep them going. But that'll do it for the DFSArmy.com Bolt Call Fantasy Podcast topic: How to win your best ball league, presented by Underdog Fantasy. Remember to like and subscribe to this channel. Remember that if you want our draft kit, if you want our actual rankings, you go to DFSArmy.com. You sign up as a monthly VIP member using promo code SAYS. That credits my man here, SAYS. Help him out. Get this man paid a little bit. Fucking guy needs money. All right. Get him some credit. Sign up with promo code SAYS. That gets you 20% off VIP. As of today, right now, we haven't raised the price. It is going up, but we have a VIP plan. It covers all sports right now, including season long, sit-start questions, whatever you need. Of course, all the DFS stuff, optimizer, projections. No one does what we do. Get in there, dfsarmy.com, sign up as a VIP. For myself, you can follow me on social media at FFootballGeek. You can follow Sez on social media at Alan Seslowsky, SESLOWSKEIZ.
No. That's not how
I can't spell it.
I
don't know how to spell it.
Look in the description of the video.
I don't know how to spell it.
But follow me on Twitter.
Right. Is there a Z in there? I don't know.
No,
all right.
It's not.
That'll do it for the bold call. We'll see you next time. Few days. We're in the heart of draft season. We will be coming at you again and again and again, drilling in these topics so that you don't fuck up your draft. Take care.
Got the best coaches in the game. We really ain't playing. We regroup up in the Slack chat where the coaches debrief. We be piecing these puzzles, occupy the chunk of the pie. Ain't no lie when we hit the block. Helmets, casket is top. You be seeing helmet after helmet, helmet after helmet. First place, second place, fifth place, eighth place, 12th place, 15, 16, 20. So many helmets.